So my name is Jesse Mazer. I spent about 8 years in the military. While I was in the military, I picked up arboriculture with a local company. Did ground and pounding for about a year and a half before becoming their climber, and then ultimately kind of transitioning into having my own company full time until the end of 2023. At which point I've kind of switched focuses, and I'm focusing on the device I made called the Rigging Remedy. It's a device we've made as a negative rigging alternative, and we're kind of spreading the word to the land and hoping we can help people with our offerings. I was in the military in the regiment of the Royal Canadian Electrical Mechanical Engineers. In that sub-branch, I was a vehicle technician. That came with a whole bunch of responsibilities and a pretty wide scope. We pretty much would fix and work on everything from chainsaws to like battle tanks. But another component of that was I was in recovery. We did a lot of rigging with the vehicles, righting vehicles, all sorts of complicated scenarios. But I've realized that subconsciously I adopted a lot of methods that I was taught in the recovery courses and brought that to tree work. And obviously engine repairs helped me running my company, being able to keep up to date on maintenance of the chainsaws, the chippers, the trucks, and all that stuff. That's been huge, been able to save downtime and money with repairs. But actually too, one thing we learned when I did a lot of gunfighter training, and we trained with this thing called the 100% method. So if we were using our rifles, we wouldn't use like little pinches and pushes with our fingers, find motor movement. We'd use like big bulky slaps, things that would work all the time with gloves on when we were cold, when adrenaline was high. And I kind of brought that mentality to the rigging remedy as well, because although I could negatively rig like effectively, it's still, there's a lot of variables and it's not always consistent. But with the rigging remedy, it kind of takes away the guesswork, and it's just the same thing that works 100% of the time. We brought kind of all of those, that whole mentality, the experience and the standards with us to make this device. So I got here, I kind of touched on when I was in the military, I picked up the trade. So I had about 2016, 2017, something like that, I got into tree work. By the later portion of 2018, I was climbing. Around 2019, I started doing projects. I was still working for that company, but I started doing projects of my own on the side, like on the weekends and evenings. And I only had for personal equipment, like one 445 Husqvarna chainsaw and a regular cab short box F-150. So I couldn't take on very large or complex tasks. So that's what I did. And also when I released moving into 2020, that was still the only equipment that I had. So I used some trailer rentals to haul brush away and all that stuff. And by 2021, I had kind of the full kit and caboodle, and then ran that until 2023. But then as we started talking about our device and showcasing it and just reaching out to other industry professionals, we started getting some interest. And we thought maybe we were onto something, so we would try and see if we could make something that would help other people out there. So we switched to do full-time focus on the rigging remedy now, and we're no longer providing services as a tree service provider. Okay. And in about 5 years' time, I guess, my hopeful answer is that we've got 2 versions of the rigging remedy out. This large-scale one for the large, heavy wood, and then a more mobile and agile, smaller version with maybe the half of capacity for ratings that can be used in more day-to-day operations. And then I'd like to see that in 5 years' time, we've actually been able to have a tangible impact. So my biggest inspiration is to make sure nobody else is getting hurt, or at least like I don't think I can stop anyone from getting hurt. Like, it's going to happen, but I'm trying to reduce those. Like, there's just a bunch of statistics that follow arborists around that are just ghastly. Like, the dangers of the profession, I think, are way over most people's heads that are even in the trade with what we're doing. But to have an impact on that, and then to have an impact in a positive way for my team and my family, to have a better quality of life and keep us engaged on these projects, that's kind of what keeps me going. I wish we could have a replacement that would be kind of a fits all situations where we don't have to negatively rig. But the fact of the matter is, not all trees are straight, not all trees are, like, it's just
structure.
We've been doing something for so long, and it works, and we have high injury statistics, we have high property damage rates, we have all of these things. So Rome wasn't built in a day. We can't solve the world's problems overnight, but we can introduce something to chip away at these problems. And I think that's what this will do. And then as an organization or a team or a crew is using the device, they're going to kind of see where it fits in their toolbox, when they'll need it, when they don't. But they'll have that crutch when they need that extra support. But then the reality is there's always going to be a time where maybe you just can't get the device in, it's too big, or just the angle that it's at. You're just going to have to do it, and we just have to continue doing that as safely as possible. But in the instances where we can look at maybe using an alternative method, that's where the rigging remedy will shine and provide that level of security and that level of control to reduce our risks and ultimately help us complete our projects faster and safer. Basically two methods. I compare the rigging remedy to negative rigging and to using a crane. And negatively rigging, again, it depends on how they're doing it, what setup they're using, how involved it is, how long it's going to take to reposition. But based on a standard large wood operation where you have the porter wrap, you have, or GRCS, whatever you have your rigging sling with your block, and where you're notching it, running the rope through the block, tying your knots, and then doing your back cut, having the piece be lowered, disconnected by the ground crew, having the rope hauled back up to you, taking it off, and then repositioning all of these slings and making a new notched cut. That's where we're comparable to in speed. And then in a crane, we're actually reset faster, because once the crane section is cut and the load is moved, by the time that even gets moved, because it moves slow and steady, right? You're gonna move this thing,
Typically cutting off massive pieces with the other crane,
and then lower it down, and then you've got to disconnect everything and then bring it back. And typically by the time that's done, we've already been able to reset and start our cut on our rigging remedy. Yeah, so I think based on, like, we've had a few conversations now over the last few months trying to pursue our mission further along, and what I've come to realize is that there's been kind of like a standard way of operating for like the last 100 years, and this is completely foreign or new. People tend to see it as a waste of time, where they don't see the full benefits of the device initially, because if you can just throw something down, or even if someone's negatively rigging, there's various ways to even do that. But if you're doing it the quick and dirty way, say you have just a sling and a rope and you're just carabining it, you're hooking that up and moving that around in like 2 to 3 minutes. It's very quick. And then you look at, say you're using a sling with a rigging block, and then you're going up and tying your knots. It gets a little bit longer, right? Maybe it's 5 minutes, 6 minutes now to reset this stuff. But getting people to understand that the install and reposition time of the rigging remedy is fairly comparable to traditional methods, while also taking bigger pieces. I think getting people to understand and appreciate that would be a huge help in driving sales or adoption of the device.
right?
The second one will be showing people and getting them to understand how the rigging remedy can actually make them more money. That happens in a bunch of different ways, because using the rigging remedy, we're offering a sustainable, eco-friendly solution that maybe our competitors don't offer. So we can charge a premium for these services, especially, say I've had clients, we don't want the stump grinder to come in, we don't want a crane to come in, we don't want you to back up too close, we have our yard, we have our property. Well, now we have this device that's low impact, doesn't have any of these negative side effects, so we're charging a premium for it. And that aside, if we look at a situation where we have medium to large wood and we're in between some structures, or there's fences, there's lines, whatever there is that's stopping us from negatively rigging large pieces, well, now we're going from doing 3 to 4 foot sections at a time to, in testing, we've taken upwards of 12 feet per cycle. So we're drastically reducing the amount of cuts we have to make, getting larger pieces to the ground faster, and while it's being positioned, the ground crew is able to actually cut up and process the lowered sections so that there's no real lost time. It might take longer in some situations to reposition the rigging remedy, but the people on the ground are going to need that time to get ready to receive the next load. I don't know how much control I have over this. What I would like to see is more in-depth, practical, for lack of a better word, standardized training, because To become ISA certified on the base level, you just require 3 years of experience that's kind of signed off or documented by an employer, and whatever they teach or talk about in those 3 years is, that could be anything. There's no way to make sure it's the right content, and then you write a practical or a multiple choice exam. And then further to that, if you want to become ISA, like aerial tree climber qualified, whatever the terminology is they use for that, they have you come out without a chainsaw, fix a tie-in point, go to a certain point, touch the flag, go to a certain point, touch the flag, and then like remove yourself from the tree back to the ground. I think you have like 30 minutes or something to do this. And to me, that shows that we can navigate and get into the trees and climb them, but it doesn't show that we have proficient chainsaw use aloft. It doesn't show that we can make educated, informed, smart decisions for rigging. All of these things, it's not really, like our working capacities aren't really tested or confirmed through any of these methods. They're kind of just, they're better than nothing, but they could be a lot better. And with that too, there are third-party like training providers that can go out. You can bring them out to your job site. You can go spend a week with them, that kind of thing. It's all kind of subject to what trees you have access to work on as well. I have some ideas. I don't know if we'll ever get to see them to fruition, where we have an indoor training area where we make trees out of power poles that are recycled, and we bring them in and we set up trees that people can navigate and climb. It doesn't necessarily mimic the feels of climbing on a real tree, because the wood is different, but it gets you using proper like work practices.
So
you
get logistics of being up in the tree,
you get used to engaging and disengaging the brake when you need to, confirming your position is set before you make a cut, make sure you're able to rig and work and efficiently and safely in a controlled environment. That's something that I think would be huge for the skill set of arborists in the future. I wouldn't change much, because the natural path that I went on from being exposed to, I worked with like a lot of companies in the city, with and for, in various capacities, either as a contract climber for them, or they had a project that they couldn't fit into their pipeline, so I would go and take care of it for them. But all of these experiences showed me different kind of like levels to the tree care companies that are out there, and like how safety varies, training varies, and it's all wild. But all of that naturally led me down my path of appreciating safety and control, and then ultimately sparking the idea of the rigging remedy. So all in all, I think things happened the way they were supposed to happen. Personally, money aside, I'm happy just to have the rigging remedy made. It was an idea that I had. I wasn't sure if it would work. I wasn't sure if people would like it. I wasn't sure, well, I already know some people don't. I've already been called like the biggest moron in the world for making it. It is what it is. But for me to have an idea and to be able to go out, chase it down, see it to fruition, have it actually work, and then hear that somebody else might actually be able to benefit from it, that's been huge for me. I wish I could give them, hey, here, take a rigging remedy like I'm Oprah. You get one, and you get one, and you get one. It's just, it's expensive to make, it's expensive to ship. It's just not feasible with our current operations. But being able to just see it come to light and work, that's pretty much enough for me. The Ohio Workers' Compensation Board is pretty much the only study out there that looks at common injuries, why they're happening, and the big one that I look at on there is the leading cause of injury that causes a worker to miss time from work. The cause of that is being struck by wood, log, tree in the foot, knee, ankle, leg, toe. So basically being hit in the lower extremities with a piece of wood. And when I think about tree work, one time where that is a pretty common occurrence is in negative rigging, and more so in spaces where there isn't room to let it run, because at that point you're just stopping the immediate slack in the system, which is on average like 12 to 24 inches. And when you
it changes from a low point to a high point.
Yeah,
for the rig.
So we'll make a cut, and that just so happens to bring the load right to our feet, and then that's where we can get impact. And then even if we don't get hit, it can be enough of a disturbance to cause us to lose footing and maybe gap out and hit the tree. So we look at that from from a bunch of different angles. We look at how much it costs to buy the kit to be able to negatively rig. So if I didn't have anything and I needed to go out and do this, maybe I just have a chainsaw. I need to go buy my quarter wrap. I need to go buy at least 1 or 2 ropes. I need to go buy a sling. I need to go buy a rigging block, and I need to get up there. And just to buy those things alone, we're looking at around $1,000. And then what we also factor into is when you're doing the negative rigging, and actually our video, the negative rigging compared to the rigging remedy, it highlights another professional doing some work there, and the load they were lowering, although it was under control, much like anyone else would do during normal operations, it still made contact with the fence board and caused some damage. I've also had it personally where I've stopped a piece because I don't have the space to let it run, but then it'll bounce and sway a bit until it stabilizes and can be lowered, and in that kerfuffle it'll maybe make contact with an eavesdrop or a gutter. So we're looking at property damages, like all these little knickknacks that add up, the time that it takes to do these repairs, whether we're doing them ourselves or bringing someone in. And then we're also looking at, because most tree operations, we only have a handful of employees. So if someone gets hurt, we typically can't go to work because we don't have a full crew to conduct the job. So then we're missing a day or 2 of work, and depending on your organization, like how much you're charging or how much you're working, missing a day of work is easily a couple $1,000s. So all of this to say that somewhere in that ballpark, negative rigging is costing us between $1,000 and $10,000 per year. If we're going to do the cost comparison to the negative rigging, I should also touch on the crane. Typically, like minimum charge of like $500 for a crane, depending on who you're going with, and it's not uncommon to be more than that. And we're spending about $800 to $1,000 every time we have our crane come out. And then if you're looking at leasing a crane, you're leasing one, $1,000, $1,500 a month, and that, none of this even touches on the maintenance costs. And when we look at the rigging remedy specifically compared to a crane, it's nice because we don't rely on any moving parts. It's a very robust standard metal on metal pinion piece of equipment that has no real high wear points and is built to stand infinite life cycles. But our device, you spend that price, and based on what we saw when we were using it, the projects where we were using the rigging remedy, we were charging about 25% more for that level of control. And just based off of that math for our team, we saw a return on investment of the rigging remedy in 6 months. So without having any extra maintenance costs associated with it. So it can be a very valuable addition to someone's toolbox. The first time using the rigging remedy, it's no joke, man. The thing's like 13 feet long. You look at it and you're like, this is what? Like, it just, even as the creators and the inventors and bringing out there with the intention of using it, we have the whole plan in our head to do it. It was just an initial, I don't know, lack of a better word again, culture shock. I'm like looking at this thing and being like, holy. So it was a little nerve-wracking the first couple times, positioning it in the tree. We set it up and took it down a few times before we made a cut just to make sure we had all the kinks worked out. And then when we got it up there, everything was set up. At this point, we weren't when the rigging remedy is attached to a tree and it goes up and there's a rigging block, not always will that on initial install be higher than the highest point of the tree. But at this point, we didn't know if that was okay. We didn't want to test it. We wanted to just have the rigging block be perfectly above the section we were cutting. So we had it all in place. I went out and I cut off a little section of wood and then threw it down so that we could have it just be a perfect high point scenario.
Everything was high points.
Yeah, so we went up and set that up perfectly, and I went down, and I was nervous. It was the first time making a cut with this thing. It's a big device. I'm up in the tree, but after making the cut, I'm going through. We opted to just to do one back cut with no notching, and we were able to do that because of the way we positioned the top cap and the ropes. It would, as it was tensioned while I was cutting, it would actually pull it away from me into like a safe.
There's opening up away
never
from the cutting surface.
Yeah, so I would cut, and Jeff was tensioning the line as I cut, and then my saw was through, and the wood was still there, and nothing had happened. There was no movement, no nothing. It was just stationary,
floating.
Not even yet. Like, just it looked like it was still attached, and I was like, okay, let's see how easy this is, and I was able to effortlessly just push the log.
So you almost doubted that you had cut through all the holding.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck? And then I pushed it and I just watched it move effortlessly to the side, and then it just lowered down in a straight line. And that was like after all that sunk in and I was sitting there in the tree watching it go down, that was the best. That I can't even like describe what that felt like. Doing tops and spars and all this stuff. I've personally never been a fan of negative rigging. It's just been something I've had to do. And you know, I'm not. I don't have 25 years personally myself as an experience owning a company, being an owner operator. I'm coming up on 8 years of experience in the tree world. So by no means have I seen it all and done it all. But during those 8 years, nobody under my employ was injured. Nothing was broken. No headaches. It was relatively safe. There was a couple close calls. It happens, but we were lucky. And but having that smooth, fluid, effortless push off and lower down with all of the moving parts that make up negative rigging eliminated, it was just this really seamless, just smooth experience. That really drove home that was a method I was going to use whenever I could. And then it also sparked the immediate idea that we need to make a smaller one, because we can only get this into trees of a certain size, and it's even if we get them into the minimum size we can use them on, like say 8 or 10 inches, it's still a little too cumbersome for that size of tree to like work around, install it, and move it. But if we scale that down, it becomes infinitely more easier, and we can use it in a whole bunch of applications. Yeah, so you know, it's a space filled with liabilities. The work that they're doing, the device that we're providing for the work that they're doing, and we're a small team. We're 3 veterans who got into tree work, and we're working on an idea that just came to us. So we don't have the big fancy legal teams. We don't have big fancy marketing departments. We're just kind of doing our best with things. So with that being said, there's a bit of a process we have to go through to make sure we're responsibly selling this device. So if somebody's interested, the best thing they can do is they can reach out to us through our website at theriggingremedy.com, send us a message, get in contact, and then you know, either myself, Steph, or Jeff will give them a call back, and we'll schedule time to have a chit chat. At which point we can kind of ask them some questions, see what their operations are like, see if the rigging remedy would be a good fit. And then at that point, we can give them a purchase agreement. We can look at having a follow-up call where we go over the specifics, sign the agreement, forward the payment, and then begin the manufacturing process. So all in all, from point of contact to when you can actually start the manufacturing process for your device is anywhere between 3 and 5 days. We just need to have those cool-off periods, make sure you're making an informed decision, make sure that the device will give you the most returns, and that you're not wasting your time and money dealing with us.
So how can they reach out to TreeKO?
Right now, the only way to contact us is to reach out through our website via the contact form.